Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art and I teach watercolor, and today we are doing fishing for peace. Simple tutorial. We're gonna kind of go slow and it's just gonna be chill, and yeah. We have Keenan here who's working the cameras.
Hello.
And we also have Aaron who's working the cameras.
Hello.
Thank you for being here, you guys.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you for having us.
And we have Chris, our editor. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Okay, so we are going to be doing this project in 5 steps. Our very first step is we will be putting in our sky. Our second step is we'll be putting in our water. Our third step we will be putting in our silhouette of our boat and our fishermen. Our fourth step we will be putting in the ripples on the water. And I put as its very own step the fishing pole because
It's tricky.
it's a thin line, my friend, so we'll work up to it. It's gonna be okay. I am using 3 colors for this project. I have black, rose red, and dandelion yellow. Just 3 colors. We're keeping it pretty simple. I'm actually using 3 paint brushes in this project. We are using a round 6, a round 2, and these are our standard go-to brushes. You can probably do at least 90% of our tutorials with just these 2 brushes. But then I'll add another brush in there that will just make your lives easier, and this is going to be a wash 1-inch brush. So whenever I'm doing color transitions or smooth washes, wash brushes are your friends. They make it super simple, smooth, they cover areas quickly. They're really wonderful brushes. So we're gonna use that in this project. Now, if you do not have a wash, you can use a round 6. It's gonna take you a really long time. Look at the bristle sizes here, you know what I mean? So it's gonna take you longer and you might get some blooms, but it's still possible. So you can do that. Another thing that you can use, and we've done it in other tutorials, is you can use a paper towel actually, or like a sponge, and do your washes with those things. I'm trying to think of a tutorial that we did that in.
Are you asking
towel.
Aaron? Because he's
No.
new. He doesn't know the answer.
I'm making eye contact with you, Keenan.
Well, I can't think of one either.
Gosh, there was.
For the wash?
Oh, I know. It was the ocean. The ocean. Was it the ocean? We did the water. The water with the paper. You don't know.
I don't remember.
That's okay. That's okay,
I filmed
Keenan.
a lot of videos.
It's just your job to pay attention to everything that I do
Well,
and remember it for me.
That's why we moved the chairs for you earlier when you were
Okay, I'm also using Let's Make Art watercolor paper. I taped it down because whenever you do like a full painting, like with the background, your paper will warp, which means it will start to buckle. So I tape it down to kind of like help the buckling. And you're gonna wanna make sure that you're painting on the rougher, more textured side. Okay. Oh, Keenan.
What do you need?
We didn't do our oath in the last tutorial. That's okay. That's okay.
That's because the bell's not nearby.
Do you have the bell ready now?
I do have the bell ready in a few seconds.
Okay. We're going to do our outline, and then we will do our oath, and then we will get to painting. So, I have my outline. I taped it to my paper. I'm going to take my graphite paper, and you're going to put it underneath your paper, dark, shiny side down. Any mark you make on top will be transferred to your watercolor paper. Now, just so you know, any watercolor is transparent, so you'll be able to see these lines. Now, when it comes to the silhouette itself, that's not a huge deal because we're painting it black. So if you have like a dark edge around your painting, this project, that's not a huge deal. Other projects, it's possible that you would see those graphite lines through your watercolor. So I try and make the lines as light as possible, and how I do that is just light pressure. So I'm barely tracing, and you can always lift up your paper. See, like this is me barely touching it, and that's me like normal pressure. Okay, so just try and do it as light as you can while still seeing it. Okay, and this is a, oh, that didn't trace. I always like to check it before I untape it, because once you untape it, your fate is sealed. Like, you cannot line it back up. Okay, that looks good. Now remember, treat outlines as guidelines. Don't look at it like a coloring book, although this one it kind of is, because we're just masking it off with black.
Oh,
You see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying.
Okay, now let us do our oath. So if you can raise your right hand, Aaron, you have to do this too.
Yes, ma'am.
And repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to
To myself, yes.
I promise not to compare my work.
Promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And
I promise to have fun.
Thank you. And we always like to start with a little oath at the beginning, just to remind ourselves we're not here to push ourselves up or put people down. We're not here to compare ourselves, because that takes the joy out of just everything. And we're not here to like also put ourselves down. Like, be kind to yourself. Sometimes if we're not comparing with others, we are comparing with ourselves. Like, we create these crazy high expectations, and then like, it's terrible. So don't set yourselves up for that, you know? Just a reminder that we're here to learn and grow and try new things and relax and have fun. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Deal.
So we're going to start with our very first step, which is putting in our sky. You can see that we have a color transition here where we're going to start with red, then we're going to go to an orange, and then it kind of goes out to like a yellowish cream. Now, the other thing that I want to kind of pay attention to, and I think that this is kind of a cool thing, is I do not have a solid horizon line. A horizon line is when the sky and the land meet, and it's usually eye level with the viewer. We do not have that here, and I actually really, really love paintings where it kind of plays with, is that land, is that sky? That's just like a personal preference, like that's a stylistic choice. But I think what's really cool about this is this can be seen as sky and water, or this entire thing could be actually seen as water. And the horizon line is actually like up here, and the sky keeps on going.
Trippy.
You know, isn't that cool? So like, if you guys want to put in a horizon line, you totally can. And what I would say though is do not put it directly underneath the boat, because it, like, that is not true to perspective and how things keep on going. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though the boat is sitting on top of the water, it keeps going behind the boat. And it's way more visually interesting compositionally. If you were to put in a horizon line, I would do it like up here maybe. And it would be really cool if you did like black silhouette mountains, did a reflection. Like this is a really simple project, so you guys can like take it in so many different ways. You can even do totally different colors. Like imagine like a blue would be beautiful.
I could see, well, I guess if we're doing silhouettes, I mean, I could see a leaf peeking out of one of the corners.
Oh,
and you're on
yeah.
a big lake, you know?
Yeah. You can even do like maybe more fishing boats, maybe, you know, like play with it. But just remember that when you're putting in any other objects within a space that already exists, pay attention to perspective, like the sizing of things. You know, if you were to do like if you were to do a duck, don't do a duck that's like half the size of this boat.
I was going to say an elusive fish under the water.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's fishing.
Yes. Okay.
So many ideas.
Anyways, giving you guys that freedom to really do whatever you want. You don't have to follow what I'm doing. So I'm going to prep my colors here. So I'm going to take my 1-inch brush, I'm going to dip it in the water, and then I'm going to hit it off the side of the cup, because we very rarely do you actually want your paintbrush to be dripping water. If it's dripping water, you have too much water on your brush. So you just hit it off the side of the cup to kind of get that excess water out. I'm going to take my rose red, and this is a very, very bright red. I'm going to move my palette in here. I'm going to add some yellow to it. This is going to be my top color. Okay, and then I'm going to rinse my brush. And first of all, I just want to congratulate myself for mixing these colors before we start painting, because usually I don't do that, but I'm trying to help you guys. So I got my red, here's my orange, and now I'm gonna get more like a gold color. So I'm gonna grab more yellow and bring that into the mix. I'm okay with them touching because these colors are gonna actually blend into each other, so it's not a big deal that they're touching.
Those are gorgeous colors.
Yeah.
They're your favorite colors.
Yeah.
Sunset
that
orange.
Makes sense. Well, I was like, these are gorgeous.
But if you want to separate the colors out, where you have your red, you have your orange, you have your like more yellow, orange, you can separate them. I'm just going to have them connected because that's who I am, but you can be different than me. And then I want it to go really light. So even though these are very strong colors, this is actually very light value. Value is the lightness or darkness of the color, not about the color itself, which means especially when I get to here, I have a lot of water mixed in with my color, and that's how I have such a light cream color. Okay, so I'm really just gonna take water and put water in down here. So there's my light yellow. So I'm not grabbing more yellow, I'm just adding water to what's already here. And I feel like it needs to be warmer. That feels pretty good. Okay, got my colors mixed. So that way we can just go for it. I'm gonna work quickly. Don't overthink this. Let's do it. Grab my 1-inch brush, hit it off the side of the cup. I'm gonna grab this red, hit my brush again in the water one more time, hit it off the side of my cup, and paint quick. I put my initial color down and then I'm adding water to it right away because I want this area to stay wet. The reason why I really want this area to be nice and wet is that then the colors will blend in together easier and I'm less likely to get hard lines. So I'm kind of just like, okay, wetting the area. Now I'm gonna grab my red again, go on the top, and see how it's just moving down? That's because I've already wet the area. Then I'm gonna grab my orange, and kind of where that red leads off, that's where I'm gonna put in my orange. I'm gonna do another layer because I want it to be a little bit darker. And again, I'm just going, you guys, just go for it. Just go for it. Now I'm gonna get into my yellow, pick up some more water because I want this to be a light value. And it's okay if you paint over your fisherman because we are painting that guy black. That value will show up against the orange and we can paint over that orange easy. And I feel like I need stronger color on the top. So I'm gonna grab a little bit more red and just right at the top, introduce that to our color.
Heat it up.
Go down. And then I'm gonna rinse my brush essentially, rinse it, hit it off on my paper towel to get rid of that red because there's still red left in my brush. Now it's clean. And I'm just gonna do water because I want this to be a really light value here. I want the light to be hitting that water and keeping that reflection really light. Okay, I feel like it needs a little bit more yellow. And these are decisions we have to make quickly, which is scary because when we're new, we're kind of like, ooh, am I allowed to do this? Is it okay if I do this color here? We don't have time for that, my friends. You gotta commit. You just gotta go. I decided it needed to be more yellow, so I immediately grabbed yellow and added it to our mixture. There we go.
That looks awesome.
That's our sky. Step 1, done. Okay, now we're gonna move on to step 2, and we're gonna do I'm calling it our water, but really this whole thing is water because our sky, you can't really see. But just to make it easier for you guys. I'm not going to talk a lot because I want to move fairly quickly. I'm essentially going to be, there's 2 ways that you can do this. I just kind of had it go into like a light yellow, but if you have a lot of space on the bottom of your paper, like if you did this fishing guy at the top, you can actually have this be a mirror reflection of the top as well.
Ooh, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so you can flip it. It depends because you have to think, if this is sky and this is water and the water is reflective, then it would reflect whatever the sky is doing, right? So I'm just gonna have it go into the yellow though. So I'm gonna work quickly. I'm gonna use mostly water with just a tiny, tiny bit of this like orange color on my brush. And then slowly I'm gonna like work my way back up with my color mixture by adding a little bit more color every time. And that seems too light to me. So again, I'm looking, I made a decision quickly, I'm committing, we're doing this. It's just a painting, it's just a piece of paper. If you make a decision quickly and you decide you don't like it, you can always try again. We give you multiple sheets in your box and in your kits because we don't want you to feel stuck. We want you to feel free to try. I'm gonna mix a little bit more. I just wanna darken this bottom just a little bit more. But the lightest value is gonna be right here, right around this boat. That's it, that's step 2.
That is stellar.
I can't close my mouth. It's just hanging open.
I was watching Aaron, and his face was, I mean, at one point he was following your hand, going back and forth on the stroke. It was amazing.
Now, we gotta wait for this to dry, but I wanna call attention to something really quick, which is, you'll see, you can even see it on the tutorial. My paper is starting to warp. It's going up and down a little bit. That's totally normal with watercolor paper. That's why I tape it down, because if it's not taped down, then my paper itself would start to curl up. So that's why if I'm doing full paintings, or really just like many layers or lots of water, I tape my paper down always. Now, if you're using, and I'm gonna talk because we're waiting for this to dry, so it's okay that I'm talking.
Totally okay with that.
Okay. There's so many different types of watercolor paper that it can be really confusing and overwhelming what you need and where to start. So previously we used Canson a lot. Canson is a great paper. The reason why I liked it is I think it worked so well with liquid watercolors and it's inexpensive. There's nothing worse than like getting yourself worked up to paint on like a $12 sheet of watercolor paper and then like messing it up. You know what I mean? Like it kind of makes it a little bit scarier to paint.
Yeah, that's terrifying. Mm-hmm.
And so, especially in my illustrative work where I'm like doing like illustrations for books or whatever like that, I'll use Canson paper and I'll use liquid watercolors because they're vibrant, they work well with that Canson. Now Canson is a wood pulp paper, which means it's not 100% cotton. Now this paper, our LMA watercolor paper, is similar in the way that it is a wood pulp paper and it's inexpensive. Now the reason why I prefer this paper to the Canson paper is because Canson has a tendency to create blooms easier. Blooms are when there's hard edges in your painting, and they're caused by uneven drying times and different water consistencies throughout your painting. So if I were to take my paintbrush and dip it in water and just like push that across here, I would get a bloom because I'm introducing more water to a certain area and it's going to dry at a different time than the rest of my painting, which was going to create a hard edge. Now personally, I think blooms can be beautiful. I mean, it's like brings in this different texture and element that you weren't expecting. So in a lot of my artwork, I celebrate the blooms. However, when I'm trying to do skies, when I'm trying to do even washes, I noticed that I was fighting with the Canson so much because like I basically had one shot to make it nice and smooth without any blooms. This paper takes a little bit longer to dry, which means if you do go back in and add like another layer or a little bit of a different color, it's not going to create blooms as easy as the Canson paper. So that's a big reason why I really like this paper, because I feel like it's so much easier to do skies, to do color transitions, to do reflections and water. I feel like it lends itself to smoother washes than the Canson does. But if you use like 100% cotton paper, you have to put more water on it at first, which can feel very frustrating if you're coming from like using like a wood pulp. Like you're used to the water kind of staying on the surface, not having to use a ton of water. When you use, I've noticed that when I use 100% cotton paper, I have to use more water, but it takes a lot longer to dry with the cotton. So then it's smoother transitions, washes, that kind of thing. It stays wet longer too. So it's kind of just exploring different things and figuring out what works for you. And the wonderful thing, well, I'm calling it wonderful, but for other people it could be frustrating. Like when we started Let's Make Art and when I started sharing the supplies that I was using, that was over 3 years ago. And I've been watercoloring and continuing my own journey this whole time, which means I have tried different supplies, and my preferences have changed. And so saying that I like to view supplies as tools. I don't think that some are inherently better than others. I think it depends on what you're trying to create. And so because of that, your preferences now can be different in a year, and it can be different in a month. And maybe if you're getting frustrated with what you're creating, I would look at the materials you're using, because it's possible that they're not in line with what it is that you're trying to create. So I always encourage people to try new things, explore. That's why we try and do like different bonus items in the boxes for you guys, so you can see, you know, what's this tape compared to this tape, or this paint compared to this paint. So you can find what works for you. And what's going to work for you is different than what's going to work for me or Keenan.
True.
Or Aaron. So just play, explore, try new things. You can't go wrong, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. You shouldn't do this. Don't touch this. Don't do what I'm doing right now. But this is dry. I'm going to like test it. So,
do you want to put some heat on it first?
Sure.
We can take a break real quick and put heat on it.
Do I have to like move?
No.
Actually, let me try this. Okay. So in watercolor, if you want things to be sharp, like we don't want this line to bleed, you want to make sure your paper is totally dry. Now, you can wait for it to dry, or you can use a heat gun. Heat guns are really, really great because like you just heat it up and then it's dry and you don't have to wait. It's great.
That is great.
It's great. But I actually didn't start using heat guns till like 2 months ago. Like I never used them ever.
Whoa.
I would just like work on multiple paintings or like go get a snack, you know.
I definitely get snacks.
You get that? But they're super helpful. So especially if like you only have like an hour to paint, like I get it, moms, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you're just trying to get it in between nap times. So if that's the case, you don't have a lot of time to spend waiting for things to dry, get a heat gun. It will make your life so much easier. Okay, I'm gonna just test to see if this is ready. And I'm just gonna go along, not the very edge, because if it bleeds, I don't want it to like go too crazy. I'm gonna go right next to the edge. And then I just look and see if that stays sharp. It's not bleeding out, so it's good. Okay, so we're moving on to step 3. I'm gonna put in my silhouette. I'm actually gonna use my round 6 for this. When I do the boat, when I go to the person, I might switch it up. So I'm gonna get my brush wet, hit it off the side of the cup so it's not dripping, pick up some black paint, make sure it's a nice smooth consistency. You don't wanna feel any resistance. If you're starting to feel resistance, because sometimes this black paint gets a little bit thick, so I can even tell, like, I feel like I'm kind of painting through not smooth. I could feel the resistance on my brush. I just need to get my brush wet. Now it's nice and smooth.
That's a good tip.
Pro tip.
Yeah, I noticed that with the black paint, sometimes it tends to be a little bit thicker. So when that's happening, you just add a little extra water. You're good to go. Okay, so now, just gonna put in my boat and make sure it's not going too crazy. Now when you wanna do thin lines, you're gonna do vertical hold. So I like to do thin lines when I'm like outlining something. Like that. And then you can use like horizontal hold, which means your brush is kind of more laying on its side. And you can fill it in quicker. And check your posture, make sure you're not hunching down, because if you're an aggressive painter like I am, you will get a pinched neck nerve.
Yep.
And that's not fun.
That's never fun.
And even though we are using black, you still want to make sure you're using water to spread that black.
Oh. For the smoothness?
Yeah, like what you have to remember, you essentially want to view water as paint with watercolor. When I first started painting with watercolor, I got super frustrated because I was using it as I would acrylic or any other kind of paint, as in I wasn't utilizing the water enough. But the liquid watercolors make it a little bit tricky because they're in liquid form. And so in your mind you think, oh, they're already wet. There's already water there. But they're super concentrated, which means you still have to have a damp brush if you want these paints to move smoothly.
That's why if your brush is not damp, you get the rough edges.
That's right. Now, when I'm doing the silhouette, so there's like my actual boat and then there's the reflection on my boat. Now you can keep all of it super dark. What I did just to make it like super clear that one is a reflection is I added a little bit more water to mine. So it's a slightly lighter value. It's kind of more of a gray as opposed to a dark black. Now that was again, that was more a personal stylistic choice. You can have yours inky black if you want. That's totally your call. And then I'm going to do my guy reflection. I haven't done them yet on the top. Okay. Now I was talking about blooms earlier. You can see one starting to form here a little bit. I'm going to leave it because I think that's really, really cool. But if you want to go back in and kind of darken some areas, you can. Now I'm going to paint my guy. Why I didn't do it already, I'm not sure. It's fine.
If you're into lettering, this would be a really fun project to add, like, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right above the guy.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good fishing thing to say.
Is that a fishing thing? I thought that was a drinking thing.
It's a drinking thing,
Well,
but it works.
You could put 5 a.m. somewhere.
It's 5 a.m. somewhere.
Yeah. My grandpa goes real early.
See, there you go. Yeah, see, thanks, Aaron.
Yeah.
Aaron, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm so happy to be a part of this.
Okay, and this guy's a little bit tricky because he's wearing a baseball cap. So it's like the littlest little hint. But you don't want to get too crazy there because then you're just like, what's going on with that hat? You know what I mean? Like silhouettes are kind of tricky. And you know what? I can tell already looking at his posture, he's too hunched over.
Maybe he's got a heavy one on the end of his line.
Oh yeah.
Just leaning in forward.
Okay. That looks pretty good. I'm going to actually, and if you want to switch to your 2 for like finer details, I'm going to switch to my 2 and kind of like make sure the edge of my boat is nice and sharp, kind of reshaping it. Yeah. Okay, okay, okay. Now we're going to do step 4. We're going to do our ripples. So I'm going to take my 2 and I'm going to grab some orange. If you need to mix more, you can. I still have some that I can at least bring up. Now this is, I just want to acknowledge that this might be a little bit tricky because you want to match values here. And what I mean by that is you have to pay attention to the value that you have already down and then what you're putting on top of it. So like if I mixed red and yellow to get the super strong orange and I painted straight with that value is super dark compared to this very light wash that I have laid down. And sometimes when your values are too far apart, they feel disconnected. And so that's why I say things like your painting will inform you as you go, because for me, I have a light value down. That means I'm going to do a medium value for these ripples. If your wash in this area is darker, like maybe more this value, then you're going to want to make sure that your ripples are a darker value. You want to bring up your values to match that. So pay attention to what your painting is doing and go from there. So I have a super light value underneath, so I'm gonna go for a medium value. I'm gonna take some orange that I already have on my palette.
There are some good warm-ups you can do for playing with value on the beginner series.
Oh yeah, if you guys need, we've been saying a lot of words here where if this is your very first tutorial, you'd be like, what are you even talking about? We have an entire beginner series where we go over supplies, techniques, all of that fun stuff.
A lot of fun.
Thanks, Keenan.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have my 2, I have my medium value, and I'm kind of just gonna follow these lines that I have here. Just doing like smooth, like kind of sketchy brush strokes. You can add a little bit of water to them. And then kind of like along these edges. Like I want it to be clear that this is a smooth lake, but the boat itself is moving. Like, so it's creating slight water ripples away from there. So I'm just gonna kind of along these silhouettes. And I have them on the outline. So you can kind of take a look. Feel free to kind of like mess it up a little bit. Orange, and then kind of under here. And I feel like this line here is kind of crooked, and that's bothering me, so I'm going to go back in and kind of like try and straighten that line out. That feels better. But like, don't go too crazy. This is an area where you could just like keep doing this forever. Editing and like being mindful of what you're putting down in this area is good. Because like, even right now, I keep on messing with it too much. And I'm gonna tell myself, and I'm telling you guys, stop, stop, stop it. Okay, okay, wait, one more. I feel like it needs to go behind here.
I should have said wait for it.
Okay. That's step 3, and our very last step is putting in this dang fishing pole. Now the reason why this is so difficult is because, and I'm going to try and put this in a way that is easier. When you're painting silhouettes or even forms, you want to pay attention to the thickness of them. So if you think of how thick a boat is, like how wide or the height of it compared to how thin a fishing pole is, those are drastic width differences. So in this painting, we've already defined how thick our boat is by the silhouette, which means our fishing pole has to stay within the rules of perspective in this world. So if I were to do, like if I were to take my 6 brush and just do a line, oh, let me get it smoother. Just do a line for a fishing pole, that would probably be too thick compared to what I already have here. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So you got to make sure that this is a very thin line because we've already established our like sizes and perspectives in this painting. And of course, as things get smaller, they get a little bit trickier to paint because it's like a barely there line. So let's practice some thin lines really quick. I'm going to use my 2 because it's the thinnest brush I have. If you have a liner, use a liner. If you have like a round 0, use a round 0. Like use the thinnest brush you have. And I'm going to get it wet. I'm going to get some black. Now, when you're doing thin lines and you want them to be smooth, they're scary because you got to commit to them. If you like go too slow or long, you're more likely to get a crooked, shaky line. So when you're doing lines, you want to do light pressure. You're barely touching the paper. You want to have your brush up so you're only using the tip of your bristles, and you want to move quick.
Can you pull the paper down so we can
see
a nice, good...
Is that good? Okay. Yep. So I'm just going to practice, and it's all about committing. You just got to go for it.
And speed, which is what I bring to the team.
That's true. So you're just going to whoosh. Oh, my whoosh was too fast that it didn't. I went too light there that it didn't even make contact with the paper. Okay, let's try again. Whoosh, 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 So the trick is trying to get a solid, thin line. Now, when I'm doing really thin lines and sometimes they skip like this, I never go back to correct them, like ever. Because trying to like get these lines to match up with the same thickness is like impossible, that it brings your eye more to it than if you were to just leave it. So that's why like little fishing poles like this are like very scary, because it's like, I got one shot, you know?
Just like Eminem.
But remember, it's just a piece of paper. If you try this and your fishing pole doesn't work out, you can paint it again. I mean, this took us like, what, 20 minutes to paint?
Yeah, nothing.
You guys can do this.
Wash.
Because of that 1-inch wash. Okay, I'm going to go for it.
Just do it.
I'm just going to commit. We're going to remember, it's just a piece of paper. It's not a big deal. It's going to be okay. Even if I mess it up, I'm still good an artist. You know, I'm still made for this.
If it looks like a cat whisker, it looks like a cat whisker.
And I have a little outline here. I'm not going to try and trace that outline because that would be too long and make it kind of like, you know. So I'm just going to like, okay, I got my angle, I got my length, I got my brush. Make sure. And sometimes what I'll do to help, I'm building this up more than I need to.
I have never been so stressed out during a tutorial.
The whole
My throat's so
time.
dry.
I can't breathe.
I'm building this up too much. I'm sorry, but this is like my mind. I'm just saying my mind out loud. So then if you're stressing out about this, you're not alone. Another tip that I'll do to help me with thin lines is after I pick up the paint, I will actually push my brush down on one side, flip it over onto the other. It pinches my bristles together to get even thinner line. Vertical hold. We're just going to commit 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Well done.
And I'm actually going to.
Don't.
I'm going to do it.
No,
I'm
you
going to
said
do
you
it.
wouldn't. You promised.
Okay, but here's the thing.
You told us not to do that.
Okay, but the reason why is if you look at where my line is starting and where it ended, this is thinner than here. So I just want to thicken the bottom just slightly because a fishing pole is thicker at the bottom and gets thinner at the top. So I'm not going to go over my line. I'm just going to thicken the base.
Oh, that's nice.
That's it. It's good. It didn't get as thin. I mean, gosh, that reference photo line, that was like, after I did that, I was like, oh, yeah, I know about fishing pole. But I think this is good too. I don't think it doesn't feel too out of whack with what we have going on here. Okay. That's our painting.
Wowza.
You guys want to untape it?
Yes.
It's the best part. Now, when I'm painting, not in a tutorial, I never untape my paintings right away. I let them dry on my desk for probably at least a day, because this is still wet. Even though it was like dry enough to paint on, it's actually still kind of moist, and it will dry flatter if you just let it dry taped to a surface for as long as you can. Okay. But we're in a tutorial, and removing the tape is sometimes the very best part. Slowly pull away. Look at that clean edge. I mean, is there anything better?
I submit that there is not.
Just section by section, little by little. Don't be too fast or too hard because you can tear your paper. Oh shoot. It's fine. Okay, keep going. Little by little. Now the reason why I'm pulling away from my paper is in case it does tear, then hopefully it will tear away from my painting and just have a slightly torn border than like actually like tear my painting. There was a tip that someone shared with me, 2 tips actually. I've never tried them and I'm really sorry. But tip number 1 was if you heat up your tape with a blow dryer or a heat gun, it removes easier. It kind of like softens the glue that holds onto your paper, so it lessens the chance of tearing. I haven't tried that, but that makes sense. And another tip that I heard is that if you do tear your paper, if you wet a spoon and kind of go over the torn area with a wet spoon, it will like put the fibers back, like even out the fibers, so it's not such a torn texture. I would assume that's just on like the border and not like actual painting area, but I thought that was a cool tip. I haven't tried it yet though.
Just start tearing paper and testing
I was
it.
gonna say you should have a tutorial where you just make something and start messing it up and try and fix it.
That would actually be really cool.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, can you guys handle that clean edge?
Looks so good.
Oh gosh, I love it when that happens. Okay, well, I can't wait to see what you guys come up with this painting. It's simple, it is straightforward, there's so many things you can add to it. I love paintings that are simple yet effective. So have fun with this, play with your colors, play with your silhouettes, play with all these things. If you're on Instagram, tag us. You can do at Let's Go Make Art or hashtag Let's Make Art. If you're on the Watercolor Facebook group, you can join that. That is called Let's Make Art Watercolor. That's just so you guys can share what you're making, learning from each other, helping each other. You know what I mean? It's so much easier to do something new when you have a group of people supporting you. And that's what we're here for. And if you need any of these supplies, you can find them at letsmakeart.com. And I just have to say this, this project I actually did in honor, well, one of them, of my bonus dad who passed away. He was a huge adventurer, a world traveler. He traveled all over the world, and he went fishing in Alaska and loved it. He told me all about it. So it just reminded me of him. So anyways, it's fun to make paintings that remind you of people that are important to you. So
Well, thank you for sharing it.
yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you need any of these supplies, you can find them at letsmakeart.com. Aaron Keenan, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys next time.